The entire room fell into an uneasy silence when the laughter started. It wasn't friendly laughter. It was sharp, mocking, filled with an arrogance so palpable even the chandeliers seemed to dim. At the center of the golden-lit hotel dining hall stood a young waitress, trembling as half a dozen powerful men in tuxedos turned their amusement toward her. Her name was Mara Est, and she had been working at the Royal Crest Hotel for only 3 weeks. She wasn't supposed to be in this meeting. She wasn't supposed to be seen. But fate has a way of putting the forgotten into the spotlight. That night, every eye in the room would remember her forever. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet strength that can silence arrogance, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel. Your support helps bring more stories that remind the world what real courage looks like. Mara had come from a small coastal town where dreams rarely left the shore. Her father was a fisherman, her mother a schoolteacher who taught English to children who couldn't afford books. Mara loved words. She could translate, write, and speak 3 languages fluently. But dreams cost money, and hers had run out when her father fell sick. College had to wait. Bills did, and single quotes so she found herself at the Royal Crest, pouring coffee and carrying plates for people who barely noticed her face. Still, she worked with quiet grace, never letting her spirit bend under the weight of reality. That evening, the hotel's banquet hall had been reserved for an international film investors' dinner, a grand gathering hosted by billionaire producer Victor Bull. He was known for discovering talent but also for humiliating those he deemed beneath him. Mara didn't know him personally, but she knew his reputation. Charming in interviews, cruel in person, she only wanted to serve, clear, and leave. But life doesn't ask permission when it decides to test someone's soul. During the dinner, the translator hired for the event didn't show up. Victor, impatient, tried to rely on an app to interpret a document sent from a foreign investor. It failed miserably, turning serious terms into nonsense. Frustration became entertainment for him. He leaned back in his chair, waving the printed contract and laughing. "Can anyone here translate this?" he asked theatrically. The guests chuckled, shaking their heads. Then his eyes landed on Mara, standing still, holding a tray, quiet and invisible. "You," he said, grinning. "You've been standing there long enough. Translate this, and I'll make you a director." The room erupted in laughter. Every part of Mara told her to stay silent, to smile awkwardly, and move on, but something inside her, small and fierce, refused to accept humiliation. Her mother's voice echoed faintly in her mind. "Even if they don't see your worth, never forget it yourself." She placed the tray down carefully, stepped forward, and took the paper from his hand. The laughter softened into murmurs as she began to read, her voice trembling at first, then growing steadier with each word. The room shifted. Her tone was calm, her pronunciation perfect, her understanding sharp. She didn't just translate, she explained. She corrected a few financial terms that even the investor on the call had phrased ambiguously. Moments later, the laughter vanished, replaced by stunned silence. When she finished, she handed the paper back, her hands still trembling. Victor stared at her, his smirk gone, amusement erased. "Where did you learn that?" he asked, disbelief replacing the playfulness in his voice. "At home," she said softly. "My mother was a teacher." The investor, still connected through video, broke into applause. The men around the table joined hesitantly, realizing what they had just witnessed. A girl they mocked moments earlier had just saved a multi-million-dollar deal from collapsing due to mistranslation. Victor looked around, embarrassed but too proud to admit fault. He managed to laugh, forcing cheer into his tone. "Well, looks like I just found someone who knows her stuff," he said. But everyone could feel the difference now. The power in the room had subtly shifted toward her. When the dinner ended, Mara returned to the service hall, her heart racing. She didn't expect gratitude, and she certainly didn't expect what came next. An older woman, the investor's assistant, found her backstage. "Mr. Burley's team just received confirmation," she said, smiling warmly. "They want to offer you a position as a language consultant for the studio's international division." Mara blinked in disbelief. She thought it was a joke, But when the woman handed her an official card and told her to come for an interview the next morning, reality began to sink in. That night, Mara sat on her small bed in the staff quarters, staring at her uniform folded neatly on the chair. She thought about her mother's hands, rough from years of chalk, dust, and work. She thought about her father, who once said, "No one can take away what you carry in your mind." She had carried her knowledge quietly, waiting for the world to notice, and tonight it finally had. The next morning, when she walked into the studio's glass building, she felt out of place among the suits and cameras. Yet as soon as she began her test translation, even the evaluators couldn't hide their admiration. Her confidence was calm, her understanding deep. Within hours, she was hired. Weeks later, she was sitting in a small office overlooking the same city that had once ignored her, now working as a full-time translator and script consultant. Her pay was modest, but her dignity was priceless. Months passed, and Mara's suggestions began improving scripts, refining emotional authenticity and cultural depth in international films. Eventually, one of her translated screenplays caught the attention of a director who insisted she co-develop a film. She hesitated at first, unsure if she belonged in that creative world. But the same quiet courage that had stood up in the golden dining room told her she did. When the film premiered a year later, Victor Boll attended not as the host, but as a silent guest. As the credits rolled, the crowd applauded. And when Mara's name appeared on screen, associate director and language consultant, he looked down, humbled. The girl he had laughed at was now the woman whose voice had lifted his studio's reputation. She hadn't needed revenge. Her grace had spoken louder than his arrogance ever could. As she stood on stage during the press event, microphones flashing, she was asked how it all began. She smiled softly. "Someone once told me to translate something if I wanted to be a director. I did, but what I really translated was the difference between mockery and belief. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Shanliu's small gesture helps spread stories that remind us that dignity, kindness, and self-belief can outshine wealth and power." And before we end, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Mara's place? Sometimes the most powerful voices are the ones that refuse to stay silent.